So, antennas. Now, this is where the fun begins. I love antennas. I think a good antenna can make up for a bad radio, and vice versa. A bad antenna can make a good radio rubbish. So these are a few common ones. Mostly these would be, well, at least these ones here would be HF, although they can be used for VHF and others, particularly the dipole. So starting here, this is, I call this a three-quarter wave end-fed. Some people call it an inverted L. It's 6 and 2/3, whichever. It's basically the same thing. And these wavelengths can be adjusted. If you remember, I spoke about wavelengths in my last video. So this one, I would use this as a half wave, and then have a quarter wave coming down, and then the feed point is at the bottom, which is where the radio would be connected to it. The good thing about this is it gives you skywave propagation and line of sight propagation, so it would radiate out, up, and off to the sides. It's a good one for getting local communications and also a bit of longer range. It does end up as a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. Because it does a bit of everything, you do lose power going off in directions that you're maybe not using at that particular time. But as a good all-rounder, it's quite a nice one to use. Next one would be possibly my second favourite, which is the inverted V. And all it is you'd have either a mast or a tree or some such, keeping it up at the top, and then you would have two wires coming down, each of them a quarter wavelength in length. And then you would have your feed point in the middle, both of them feeding into a bit of coaxial cable and then going down into the radio. Great setup, and it's sort of broadside on propagation, if that makes sense. Let me just, so if you were looking at it from the top, so that's it from the top, it would be blasting out sort of that way and that way, and not so much out to the sides. It does give you a bit of skywave propagation, but it's mostly broadside on. But it is quite a good one for range. Get rid of that. Next one is essentially a vertical radiator, is what it's called. And if you ever see a walkie-talkie with a wee nubbin on the top, that's what that is. It's just a standard piece of wire straight up. It can be really any length you want comparative to the wavelength, quarter wave, half wave, three-quarter wave, or a full wavelength if you really want. It doesn't matter too much. There are pros and cons to having half wave or a quarter wave, but in my mind they're that small that I would rather have the extra space in my pack to have more antennas rather than take it all up with one. This one here is a dipole, which is a very, very common one, especially among the amateur radio community. It's essentially two legs, a quarter wavelength, very similar to the inverted V, but it is it runs parallel to the ground, and you'll have it up whatever height you need after you've done your heights and gains. And it is skywave propagation. It'll get off the atmosphere. It's very good for getting quite long distance communications. Now, with that being said, a vertical radiator on HF, so something like this, just a wire going down a mast, you can get very far with that on HF. VHF, not so much, but with HF especially, you can talk quite far with that. You don't need to go and have a massive antenna in order to get long range. A vertical radiator would do the job just as well. It's more about your location, so the sighting of the antenna, make sure that it's in a good location. Your radio power levels and stuff, make sure that they're correct. And time of the day is also very important. And you also have to be aware of not only the time where you are, Because if you think about it, if you're using, particularly with skywave propagation, the ionosphere changes at night. I'm not going to get into that in any great detail. There are videos out there that would be able to explain it far better than I can. I'm not a scientist. I just know that it changes. Its properties change, and so the way that a signal reflects off it also changes. So you have to be aware of what time it is in the area that you're wanting to talk to, because if you think, okay, well, 4 o'clock here, it's a nice clear day, I'm getting good signal to Europe, I'll see if I can adjust it and see if I can get somewhere farther afield. If you're trying to get Russia or Italy or somewhere like that, or even Australia where it's quite far away, you have to be aware that it's night time there, or will probably be night time, or different times of the day depending on when you're transmitting. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Then the Yagi, or Yagai, I can never pronounce it, this thing. It's an interesting antenna, and I am currently on a mission to learn more about it, because how this works is, this is your antenna here, this middle one, or well, not middle one, the second one in, and it is like a dipole. It has two legs, if you will, at a quarter wavelength each. Then this bar that goes through the middle is isolated from the rest of this, so this would be plastic or wood or some other non-conductor to isolate these elements. Then this bit here is called a reflector, and then these are directors, and the reflector is always longer than the antenna element, so the actual bit that's sending your signal, and the directors are always smaller. And what this causes to happen, I didn't cover this in the last one, but I'll go into a bit here, is actually the signal that's coming out from the dipole, or from the radiating element, comes out the same way as it would for a regular dipole. It will come out in all directions. But what happens is, it hits the reflector element, and it then balloons back out. And that's where the directors come in. They then focus the signal, so that it then propagates out in a beam. Now, that that's all well and good, and I know that that's how that works. However, what I don't know is why, and that's what I'm currently on a mission to find out. So if anyone knows, why does having just, because these are not connected to anything, these director elements, they're isolated, they are just bits of metal, that's all they are, same with the reflector. So why does it make it behave in such a way? Why do the radiating, the RF, why does it come in like that whenever it sees or hits these beams, that then cause it to direct itself into that more direct signal? Yeah, I don't know why, and I'm on a mission to try and find out, because it's been annoying me for a while. So I'm trying to figure out exactly why that happens, and once I find out, I will do another video on that, because I think it's quite interesting. But I think it's more a question for a potentially a physicist rather than a radio person, potentially. But I might be proven wrong.